Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight for this season's Crowd Conversations. Crowd Conversations is a monthly virtual speaker series focused on building a circular construction economy in New York State, with deconstruction and building material reuse as important components as we shift from a linear to a circular economy. I'm Gretchen Worth. I'm the project director of the Susan Christopherson Center for Community Planning, which helps New York State communities plan for a more equitable, climate resilient built environment. The Christopherson Center is one of the founding partners of CROWD, which stands, I think for many of you know, stands for Circularity, Reuse, Zero Waste Development. And we're the organizer of CROWD Conversations. So this season, we are focused, CROWD Conversations is focused on building a New York State-based material marketplace. So between now and June 2024, we'll hear from New York State-based folks whose work in both the private and public sectors is actively expanding our nascent marketplace for building material reuse. Whether they're deconstructing buildings, running salvage and reuse operations, relying on reclaimed material for their architectural work, advocating to save our existing buildings and infrastructure. There are people who are doing awesome work every day in New York State, and they see the opportunities inherent in a larger, more robust marketplace. And we're so pleased tonight to welcome Rebecca Miller and Jamie Ethier from Empire State Development, who are going to talk about the work that they're doing to support economic development around circular construction economies. Moderating tonight's conversation is Diane Cohen, CEO of Finger Lakes Reuse, which is based in Ithaca and known throughout New York State and the US. And Diane is also a founding partner of CROWD. Before we start, just a couple of housekeeping details. We will keep this conversation to an hour. And so please type your questions into the chat for Rebecca and Jamie as we go along. And then we'll get to those at the end before our time is up. And please keep yourselves muted so that everybody can hear the conversation and the presentation. We are recording tonight's presentation, and we'll send that out to everybody who's registered for tonight's event. And please do consider joining for our next crowd conversation on Monday, December 14th or December 4th. And then we'll be joined by the team at Trilocks, which is a Brooklyn-based architectural firm whose mission has very much to do with environmental sustainability. Their climate positive practice includes sourcing materials from historic structures and local forests, and they're deeply involved in urban forestry best practices. And we're really excited for them to share more about their business. So you can register for that online at crowd.org, crowd with a zero for zero waste development. And you can also, through crowd.org, access past conversations that we've recorded. So just really briefly, there we go. CROWD is a network of partners who came together about 3 years ago, working toward a more sustainable built environment in New York State. We're planners, architects, preservationists, municipal staff, reuse and salvage professionals, environmentalists, university faculty and students, and our numbers are growing along with our geographic reach. We're really working to create a circular construction economy in New York State that brings environmental, economic, and social benefit to all of our communities. We support and advocate for a more sustainable built environment, which means caring for and maintaining our existing building stock. And it also means viewing deconstruction and building material reuse as critical alternatives to the demolition of buildings and infrastructure and the creation of vast amounts of landfill waste. We work on local and state policies and practices, research and analysis, education, community engagement, and equitable workforce development. And you can learn more about CROWD from our website, as I mentioned, crowd.org. You can register for upcoming CROWD events. You can sign up for our mailing list. You can download all sorts of different resources and resource guides, and you can reach out for more information. So as we get started, I want to acknowledge that Ithaca is on the traditional homelands of the Guy-Cahono, the Cayuga Nation. The Guy-Cahono are members of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, an alliance of 6 sovereign nations with a historic and contemporary presence on this land. The Confederacy precedes the establishment of Ithaca, New York State, and the United States of America. We acknowledge the painful history of Guy-Cahono dispossession and honor the ongoing connection of Guy-Cahono people, past and present, to these lands and waters. So thank you again for joining us tonight. Diane, I'm going to turn it over to you, and really excited to get going over this next hour.
Great. what happened? Oh, I don't know what happened, but sorry, everything went away. But hello, everyone. I'm now looking at everybody's names. I guess the presentation went away. Okay, that confused me. Sorry. Um, uh, I just wanted to say I'm really thrilled to see everybody here, and thank you, Gretchen, for putting together this amazing program. I was really happy to be speaking last month, and just what the Susan Christopherson, and particularly you, Gretchen, your efforts to raise this issue and build this really crowd of interest has been really exciting for me professionally. And it's a delight to be able to introduce Rebecca and Jamie today. Really happy about this, and looking forward to hearing these your remarks and your perspectives. So a little background on Rebecca. Rebecca serves as the director of the Environmental Services Unit at Empire State Development in Albany, New York. In this role, Rebecca oversees a diverse set of targeted programs associated with environmental issues. Prior to this, Rebecca held positions at New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. And Jamie is an economic development specialist with over 20 years experience in natural resources management, land use, community planning, coastal resources protection, and climate change resilience. Jamie has spent most of that time working with state agencies, including Empire State Development, Department of State, Department of Environmental Conservation, and the Hudson River Valley Greenway. So take it away, Rebecca, and look forward to hearing what you're about to present.
Thank you, Diane, for that introduction. Can you hear me okay? Okay, thanks. And I apologize if I have to mute quickly, and my worst nightmare has come true. My dogs are starting to growl and bark as the presentation starts. So, but I wanted to say thank you to everybody. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Gretchen, for inviting us to speak tonight. I feel like we are speaking to a group of individuals who know far more than we do on this topic. But we are excited to be able to share with you what we're doing at an agency level to help move this issue and this topic along. And I see there are some DEC people on the presentation as well, and they have also been a tremendous help. So, we're doing what we're doing because you've been able to empower us to do this. So I wanted to give that recognition. So let me go ahead and start the presentation here. Okay. Can everybody see the presentation?
Sure can.
Okay, great. So again, thank you for inviting us to speak tonight. And what we're going to be talking about is how ESD is supporting a circular building economy in New York State through funding programs and the relevance of this work to New York State's climate goals. And Diane gave the introduction already. This is myself and Jamie, and we are in the Albany office. I've been with Empire State Development now for almost 7 years, and Jamie, what are you on, about a year and a half at this point?
Yep, year and a half.
Year and a half. So neither of us came to the table with an education or background on circular economy, but we both have environmental backgrounds and we're both analytical. So this has been a good fit for us to dive into. So tonight we're briefly going to cover who is Empire State Development? What are we as an agency? We'll get into a circular economy and why it's important, how a circular economy supports New York's Climate Act, and then we're going to dive into our pilot program and some preliminary results that we're happy to share with you tonight, and then discuss some next steps as we see them. So I apologize that some of this is small to read, but really I just wanted to put this up here so you can see the map of New York State and you can see where some of our offices are. Empire State Development, or ESD for short, is New York's economic development agency. It's comprised of two entities. We have the New York State Urban Development Corporation and the Department of Economic Development. So having both a state agency and a corporation working seamlessly together allows for efficiency and enhances the delivery of initiatives. ESD has more than 500 employees located at our three main offices in Albany, Buffalo, New York City, and across our 7 other regional offices. So let's dive into this graphic. You know, it's a diagram that most of us are familiar with. And Gretchen started off the conversation with talking, this is essentially your mission. You know, on the left is a depiction of a linear economy. It destroys economic value by trapping natural resources and materials as waste. This is a take, make, use, and dispose system with a focus on profitability. Whereas the circular economy is focused on sustainability and aims to stop waste from being produced in the first place and keep our resources and materials in circulation for longer. According to New York State Department of Environmental Conservation's draft waste management plan, which, by the way, is entirely focused on building a circular economy through sustainable materials management, it reads that a circular economy is a model of production and consumption that involves sharing, leasing, reusing, repairing, refurbishing, and recycling existing materials and products for as long as possible. And there are 3 fundamental principles to this circular economy. And they are to eliminate waste and pollution, to circulate products and materials at their highest value, and to regenerate nature. And as we can probably all deduce, and as you know, supported as well in the management plan, but the circular economy solves a lot of issues when it comes to conserving natural resources, reducing energy consumption, preventing pollution, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, which I'll touch on that a little bit more in a few slides, protect human health and the environment. And the circular economy also benefits the industry by creating new job opportunities through a new business model and ensuring materials with value stay in the economy, providing value instead of being disposed. Sorry. So recently I attended an EU conference about circular economy, and I was introduced to this concept of zero waste hierarchy. Up until now, I'd always heard about the waste management hierarchy, but I hadn't been introduced to the zero waste hierarchy. So I wanted to share it with you in the event that maybe some of you haven't heard of it or looked at it before either. I find it interesting, and while a circular economy is a system in which resource inputs and wastes are minimized, a zero waste goal and hierarchy emphasizes a circular economy with no waste. And I really feel that that first step it's critical, and it's of particular interest to me. So it includes refuse, rethink, and redesign. So it requires a look upstream and considers how any widget being made how it will be reused before it's ever made. So rethinking and re-engineering how widgets are made such that they can be reused is really a key step to truly creating a circular economy. And I know that although this is not part of the European Union directive on waste, a lot of the European businesses are really implementing this as part of their business model, which is, it's admirable. So let's get into how this ties into what's happening in New York State today. As you may know, in 2019, Governor Hochul signed the New York State Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act into law, and is referred to as the Climate Act. This is one of the most aggressive climate laws in the US, and the law outlines goals for New York State, including calling for the reduction of economy-wide greenhouse gas emissions by 40% by 2030, and no less than 85% by 2050 as compared to 1990 levels. The final scoping plan was released in December of last year, and it lays out the roadmap with strategies and suggestions for achieving these targets. In the final scoping plan, there are strategies that we can point to, and I'll briefly touch on those. But overall, operating under a circular economy reduces the need for new products, which in turn reduces greenhouse gas emissions associated with energy-intensive manufacturing processes and transportation and everything else that's associated. So clearly, supporting a circular economy directly supports a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. There are two strategies that I look at as I started to get into trying to figure out what I wanted to do, what we could possibly do with a pilot program. And one strategy is a waste strategy. It's W2, and it's waste reduction, reuse, and recycling. And it identifies that the reuse of construction materials as a key element. The plan states that the state should support policy approaches that increase the capture and use of building deconstruction materials and recovered aggregate for a variety of applications. It goes on to say some other things, but that to me is critical. And then strategy B11 in the final scoping plan, it's under the building section for B. It's reduce embodied carbon from building construction, and it states that the most impactful way to reduce embodied carbon is to reuse existing buildings where practical rather than demolishing and constructing anew. I think it's safe to say that this also would include reusing existing building materials as well. So agencies like Empire State Development, they have a responsibility to do their part towards meeting these goals. And I want to note at this point in time, the Climate Act and these strategies and goals are really directed more towards the agencies themselves when it comes to like operations and buildings. So what we're doing, in addition to being responsible at the building level to the extent we can, some of them we have leases with OGS and whatnot, but we're trying to take it a step further and see opportunities in our funding programs that we may be able to actually pass this along as well and maybe achieve greater results. So in the end, yes, the circular economy supports the goals outlined in the Climate Act final scoping plan. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Jamie. He will get into talking about the pilot program that we started. And yeah, Jamie, take it away.
Sounds good. Thank you, Rebecca. Good evening, everybody. As Rebecca had said, the Empire State Development, we were looking for opportunities for focusing in on waste reduction, and Empire State Development is responsible for administering the Restore New York Community Initiatives Project and program. And it seemed to be an excellent opportunity for us to focus in on how to advance the Climate Act through this program. So a little background on the Restore New York program. It provides municipalities with financial assistance for the revitalization of commercial and residential properties. The program encourages community development and neighborhood growth through the elimination and redevelopment of blighted structures. Restore New York funding is available for projects involving the demolition, deconstruction, rehabilitation, and/or reconstruction of vacant, abandoned, condemned, and surplus properties. This, coupled with the fact that construction and demolition debris account for the largest waste stream in New York State, made this funding program a natural fit for conversations related to incorporating what we're calling sustainable construction practices. We saw an area of opportunity to get our finger on the pulse of current activities, collect data, identify gaps, and hopefully make a difference. So for purposes of this conversation and the conversations with the grantees, sustainable construction practices include preservation, deconstruction, salvage, recycling, and using materials made from recycled content. So our outreach related to sustainable construction started with Restore New York Round 6, which was just last year. We included language in the award letters encouraging grantees to adopt sustainable construction practices as part of their projects, and as a condition of their award, grantees were required to engage in a conversation with the Environmental Services Unit about opportunities for incorporating sustainable construction into their projects. Now, keep in mind that municipalities are the grantees, and funds are often passed through to the property owners, and projects are undertaken by separate builders, contractors, and developers. So there are many parties that need to be brought into the conversations. Rebecca, next slide, please. So conversations, we were able to have conversations with 42 of the 66 grantees. And as part of those conversations, this yielded several takeaways that can't be easily reflected by metrics. Certainly, we tried to find metrics that easily summarize and show the picture of many stories, many conversations. However, there are many lessons that we learned that couldn't easily be summed up in numbers. In summary, we learned that many builders and contractors already implement several reuse practices. For many of you on this webinar, it may not be a surprise, but we're finding that many contractors are already incorporating many of these construction practices, many of which are voluntary and others are required by other funding programs, such as homes and community renewal. We also learned that obstacles to implementing sustainable construction practices include associated labor costs, on-site storage and staging costs, as well as lining someone up who was ready to take reusable materials. Even if sustainable construction practices were implemented, we heard that tracking the associated metrics is time and cost intensive. We also heard that more financial incentives are desired to make these practices more mainstream, and some feel it's time to make these practices a requirement. So certainly, as being on the phone with a funding agency, it was no surprise to me that they were advocating for more financial incentives, of course. So for round 7, where we are now, we stepped up our outreach with language in the award letter requiring grantees to watch a webinar on sustainable construction practices and then to complete a short survey as to how grantees may already be looking to incorporate these practices into their projects. We're trying to hone in on the details just a bit. So I'll be getting into some of these survey details in the next couple of slides. Perfect. Next slide, please. So out of the 74 grantees for round 7, we've had 40 responses representing 32 unique municipalities. So as I mentioned earlier, the grantees for this program are municipalities, and then the project developers are different entities altogether. So we found that as we reached out to the grantees, asking them to complete the surveys, some were passing this on to one, maybe two other entities. And so we were finding that we were having difficulty representing just one grantee. So out of the 40 responses so far, we've seen 32 unique municipalities. Results presented will be based on the 40 responses. So the survey is hosted on SurveyMonkey, has less than 10 questions. So it's a relatively short and easy to complete survey. So hopefully to further encourage grantees to complete that survey. When asked if grantees will be incorporating sustainable construction practices into their ESD-funded project, all responded yes, so which is great. When asked to identify which practices they will be incorporating, 80% said they will be preserving as much of the existing structure as possible. 50% will be reusing deconstructed materials on site. 47% will be recycling construction and demolition debris at a processing facility, whereas 47% will also be building with materials made from recycled content. As you can see on the lower bar in this table, some of the other practices include donating salvaged furniture and materials, separating metal, and then one indicated that they would be decommissioning an old barn. So as you can see, the Restore New York program covers the full spectrum of redevelopment projects, from turning old barns into brew pubs, as well as taking an old manufacturing facility and turning it into a multi-story apartment building. Rebecca, next slide, please. As to the reasons why grantees are incorporating sustainable construction practices, we've learned that all are doing so because, quote, it's the right thing to do. Now, in addition, nearly 60% indicate that it saves money. Less than 10% indicated that they receive a tax break. Approximately 30% indicated that it doesn't add project time, so why not do it? 10% indicated it's a mandatory component of another funding source. And then one grantee stated it was required by a local climate action plan. And so far, no one has yet indicated that it's required by a local ordinance, which could be a possible opportunity. As far as the other reasons, we're hearing time and again, and in this round as well as in the last, that grantees are incorporating sustainable construction practices as they are trying to preserve or retain the historic character of their downtowns. And the grantees want to reuse existing materials in different ways. Rebecca, next slide, please. So in the previous question, almost 60% indicated incorporating sustainable construction would save money. However, when we asked the grantees to estimate the added expenses above demolition, all grantees indicated that there would be some additional expenses, with 20% indicating that there would be an additional expenses above $100,000. So how do we explain this contradiction? Well, I'm still working on that, but I think this is a classic example of the devil is in the details. So certainly this could be an additional expense in the short term with the savings over the long term. So maybe through tax breaks or through other efficiencies. In round 6, we heard from many grantees that they were preserving as much of the existing structure as possible, as whatever building is retained means less that has to be rebuilt. So it makes sense. So cost savings. We checked in with some of the respondents that indicated over $100,000 of additional expenses, and it seems that square footage of the project plays a part, whereas some are seeking LEED certification for the new project, as well as some are incorporating big ticket items such as solar or heat pumps, which also adds to the additional expenses. We also learned that some are planning complete restoration. And so for some of these historic preservation projects, we're finding that that's a much higher price than simply reconstructing into something completely different. In general, we're learning as we go, and we're learning that we need to extract more details through the survey. So as you may agree, a redevelopment program like Restore New York is a natural fit for incorporating sustainable construction practices, whether that be preservation or deconstruction and recycling. We heard many grantees in round 6 indicated they would continue to undertake preservation, but it would certainly be nice to see more financial incentives to help make these practices more commonplace. So those were the lessons learned. Rebecca, back to you.
Thanks, Jamie. Give me 1 second here. So, Jamie, thank you for that. It was a really good summary of some of the data we've received so far. And, you know, this is one area of opportunity that we were able to jump on because the timing was right as the round 7 Restore New York was getting up and running, and round 6 had just been awarded or was just being awarded. So we were able to quickly put something together and try and get whatever information we could. But I did want to make a note of some other efforts supporting a circular economy. And let me just see here. Give me 1 second. I'm so sorry. So in May of this year, we added language to our Regional Economic Development Council capital funds program that gets it's up through solicitation through the consolidated funding application. And in May of this year, we added language to this solicitation indicating that we were looking to support projects that support green buildings and sustainable development. And that would include reusing buildings and or building materials, amongst other green and sustainable efforts as well. Last year, through this capital grants fund, prior to this language, ESD awarded Momentum, a windmill blade recovery and recycling facility, $660,000 towards their $3.3 million facility in Bath, New York, which is in Steuben County. And we will be looking forward to funding more projects like this. As for round 8 of Restore New York, that will be coming out in the near future, but there haven't been any dates established as of yet, and nothing's been finalized. But we do have the funding for it. We will be working with the program administrator of Restore New York to determine if it's possible to incentivize deconstruction through maybe a couple questions in the application process. As for the future, Restore New York is one example of how we may be able to influence supporting a circular building economy, but there may be other areas too. We'll be meeting with other teams across Empire State Development to see where there may be more opportunities to share ideas and perhaps influence some change. Any work that we do, we will be collecting data that will allow us to make informed decisions moving forward. And that would include any potential new funding programs that may dip into this area of supporting a circular building economy. And I apologize that our presentation is a little bit short, but that's what we had for this evening. And we're happy to field any questions and take any comments. We're just happy to be able to maybe see if there's an opportunity for us to, like I said, work in supporting a circular building economy where it's possible, even though there may not be a direct funding source for this, but there's opportunities to embed it into some of our other programs.
Well, thank you, Rebecca and Jamie. It's just really exciting to hear your view and the work that you're doing, recognizing the value of the circular economy. So it's exciting for me to hear that and to understand that there could be some sources developed to support more of the circular economy. So right now, please do add anything you want in the chat, questions. And we've got one from Susan Holland, who's the director of Historic Ithaca, a building preservation organization, for those of you who haven't met her. And she's asking on the Restore New York pilot program. I would imagine that SHPO, and that is the State Historic Preservation Organization. And you can unmute yourself, Susan, if you want to clarify more, would be involved in many of these projects. Thank you for the survey and for the work happening now. Are there any steps happening in concert with SHPO?
That was good, Diane. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I've lost sound. Can you hear me?
Sorry, Rebecca.
Yes.
Oh, she's getting a little choppy. Well, let me respond to that. In regards to the State Historic Preservation Office, we have not worked directly with SHPO on these projects, but they are certainly involved. And through some of the conversations that we've been having with grantees, we've learned that many are pursuing tax credits, preservation tax credit.
Yep.
And so even though we don't get involved with that part of the project, it is certainly an incentive for them to preserve the structure, and therefore, as we're learning, to hit some of our benchmarks when it comes to sustainable construction practices.
Great. That's great. Yeah. I mean, we're a preservation organization in Tompkins County, and we started this because we had the partners. So we have been encouraging the state to, work more heavily on this, especially with the CLPCA. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing. And remember Restore New York for a long time. I forgot about that program. So thanks for the refresher course too. Thank you.
That's great. So from Katie Barnes, has Empire State Development explored opportunities for workforce development in deconstruction and reuse?
I will say that I have started the conversation with our new workforce development director, and that is the extent of that answer. So, there's a lot of areas for building up this this economy, and so I've started that conversation. I do know that there's a lot of opportunities through, as this director told me, that through the Quest Stars, with some of the local colleges and whatnot. So that conversation is just getting started, and hopefully I'll be able to have a more robust answer for you in the future.
Great, thanks. And keep crowd in mind as maybe some technical assistance. There's been a lot of wide array of expertise that's been joining these very regular meetings that we've been having.
Absolutely.
And, then Dominic is asking, where would the nearest Empire State Development office be for those of us in Tompkins County or Cayuga County?
Tompkins County or Cayuga County? Let me see here. Give me 1 second. I want to say which one it is, but I don't want to. Tompkins is It's the Southern Tier office, I believe. Give me one second. Tompkins, Binghamton, please forgive me. Okay.
Yeah, Tompkins has Ithaca in it, and so yeah, we're probably closer
Yep.
to Binghamton office.
So it'd be the Southern Tier office.
Okay.
And please, if you're looking for a contact at that office, my information, I can put it in the chat again. Feel free to reach out and I can put you in contact with somebody there if you have a specific question.
And then possibly for Cayuga County, which is more north, would it be the Syracuse office?
Why don't they have it labeled with? Yes, it would be the Syracuse office. Correct.
Okay, next question is there a plan to make some of your survey results public? We hear a lot from people that they want to hear more from folks who have actually undertaken projects involving deconstruction.
I'm hoping we can get it there. I was very fortunate to be able to recently share this pilot program and some of the results with our commissioner, Hope Knight. So we're not there yet as far as making it public, but I'm hoping, we're at, I think 43% responses. And this is a condition of funding that we have the survey responses come back. So we do have a number of responses that we're still waiting for. So I hope that when we get more and I can actually really dive into this deeper, maybe even look at some more data as far as the applicants in general and what actual projects they were looking to do to see if we can make some more correlations. So like I said, this is very preliminary and it gives us some understanding as far as, what the grantees are saying. But we're going to try and see if there are any more correlations that could be made. And I wouldn't want to update the commissioner. And then hopefully we can put something out as far as a memo or just make this more public so people can use it if they want to use it.
Great.
And also, I just want to let everybody know for the Restore New York program, it covers a full spectrum of projects from those that are just ideas to those that are fully fleshed out and have architectural drawings and engineer schematics. So some of the projects aren't quite ready for responding to some of our survey questions when they're just in the municipal hands and they're trying to think about the next steps, maybe go out with a request for proposals or something along those lines. So we're learning that depending on who we ask the questions to, they may have those answers already figured out, or they may just be waiting for the engineer to come on board.
Great. Thanks for that. Let's see. And then Rashmi is asking, do you know if the use of the concept of circular building economy is being emphasized in the training of new architectural students rather than being an elective, and to change the way we think of design in architectural schools? I can kick that off with Cornell University right here in our town. I'm in Ithaca, has a circular construction lab that is doing exactly that. It's very exciting, but it would be interesting to hear what you guys are hearing in Albany.
Unfortunately, I don't have information on that. That's not an area that we've been working in. So like, we're building our capacity as well. So I really can't speak to what is being done at the architectural level and what students are learning. I'd be interested in that as well.
Yeah, I would encourage everybody to look up the Circular Construction Lab. They're a crowd partner, and Felix Heisel, who's the architecture professor there, he's wonderful and a global citizen, and he's a wonderful partner to be able to work with on a regular basis. And he's teaching his students exactly what Rashmi is asking. Okay, another question from Gretchen. So for Jamie, based on the Restore New York conversations, what are the biggest actions a municipality or state could take, incentives, legislation, speedier permitting for sustainable building works that would really move the needle?
Wow. I think we're learning, as Rebecca said, we're certainly learning as we go what some of those incentives are. It could be anywhere along the lines for a municipality, could be in a local ordinance. Working with the climate smart communities, certainly there's a whole series of actions that can be taken there. But from incentivizing these types of projects, it could also be language. As we were working in the last round, we were working with some of the grantees for putting specific language into their request for proposals when it came to either seeking ideas for the projects themselves or the best ways to undertake construction. So something as simple as inserting some language into a request for proposals could certainly be a good way to go. Or you could have local ordinances that require this type of actions. So certainly
or
a
working it
full
into your
spectrum of
building code.
activity. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it didn't get lost in my ears when you said some of the responses were lack of finding an easy partner to bring the materials to. So helping incentivize that market in some way. Not that I'm biased, but you know, it's something that we've seen is needs obviously to build up as well. Okay, let's see. Where am I? Okay, so how does your work tie into the climate plan for New York? Are you able to measure embodied carbon and reduction of emissions with these projects?
Well, it ties into the climate plan. Like I said, the climate plan, if you look at it, it really is not saying that agencies must administer or must do X, Y, and Z through their funding programs, right? Right now, the climate plan is, says we've got goals and then we've got strategies by which we can, roadmap and achieve these goals. But there's nothing saying what agencies, must do. So right now, a lot of conversation is at the higher level, like I said, at the agency level, at the agency buildings, what agencies themselves are doing. We're just trying to take it to that next level because I see that opportunity to actually try and do something with some of our funding programs. So this is kind of above above and beyond, but I see that as a great opportunity. So right now, no, we're not able to measure carbon, embodied carbon, but we have been able, and it's not part of the not part of the presentation, but we did ask for those people who would be implementing sustainable construction practices, would they be collecting metrics including, how much was diverted, how much was salvaged, how much was sold, how much was reused, a lot of information as far as metrics, maybe even providing some cost estimates as far as what was saved by reusing some of these materials rather than purchasing new. And some people have agreed to that they would be collecting metrics and they would share the results with us. Others agreed that they would be collecting metrics but need our help. So that is a role that we will be playing as far as helping them to understand what they should be keeping track of. But that's really the extent of the data that we're collecting at this point. And that would be really critical for us to get some more information to then go ahead and make maybe some more policy decisions based off of that. Even more important as far as when it comes to measuring and metrics, if we are able to incentivize deconstruction or implementing some of these practices in the round 8, and people agree that they want to do this, perhaps with more points on questions, whatever the case may be. This is me wishful thinking. But if we do have that, and then they do agree to that, then we're able to say, okay, you're a grantee and you've committed to this. Now we can go ahead and collect this information and use this to propel this effort forward. So that's the extent as far as data collection is concerned. This was not required by grantees implementing any of these practices. This was more, it started off as an education sharing. We've got some information we can share with you. We'd love to have some information coming back, and let's build off of that. So that really just started as a conversation and we're building as we go.
That's great. That's what you can do. I happened to have a meeting this morning with 2 students in the Cornell Circular Construction Lab. We've been working with Ontario County on a large municipal building that was built in the 80s. It's not particularly architecturally significant, but they want to preserve the building itself, but they're doing a full gut rehab and it's huge. It's got their probation and their Department of Social Services and child welfare. It's an enormous 2-story building that they're doing in 2 phases. And so we walked through a couple of weeks ago and took an inventory, a manual inventory. And what we're trying to do is pilot, how could we help a contractor or a developer inventory these things better. And so they have they have some exciting tools, and they were showing me some of them today. They already did a takeoff on how many steel studs are throughout the building. It was around 11,000. That's the first look. They want to double check some things, but then they have a carbon impact calculator, and there's some really exciting components coming out of that. So they could really provide some exciting technical assistance. And as you're trying to educate yourselves on how to help the developers and the municipalities, they could be a really great resource.
That sounds great.
So let's see. The next one's from Gretchen. Is there much cross-agency communication or liaison among ESD and state agencies or federal actively working in embodied carbon and waste diversion, including NYSERDA, DEC, EPA, et cetera?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot, and I actually serve on the Green New York Council as a representative for my agency. And we just had a meeting in White Plains last week. So a lot of the agencies were together. We're talking about Green New York and Executive Order number 22, which a lot of that overlaps with, waste. And so there's a lot of discussion being had. And it's funny because there was a table in discussion about embodied carbon. And I'm sorry, my dog is moving, about embodied carbon. And, I sat down at the table, and it was a woman from NYSERDA, and she had a lot of great information. And so I picked her brain, and I was like, I'm trying to find people who could do some of these salvage assessments and identify. And, do you have any familiarity with this work? She's like, you should really talk to Crowd. I'm like, okay. So we're all kind of at the same level. OGS and SUNY Construction Fund we're in contact with, and NYSERDA and DEC. It seems like we're all doing what we can in our areas, and Green New York Council meetings or some of these subcommittee meetings are great opportunities to kind of exchange information and ideas where people are. So yeah, it's a constant conversation, and we're collaborating where we can.
Well, it's great to hear. I know that from my end, if people know what the Doctor Who TARDIS box is, it seems like something that you could just kind of wrap your arms around, but then you open the door and it's this absolutely enormous world, and it impacts every sector. And with building materials, I'm really glad to hear that you're starting with municipalities. And I guess I had a question about Restore New York. Will the future phases, is this always for municipalities that then work? So is that what the next phase that's coming out going to be?
Yes, it's always municipal funding. And like Jamie said, then the municipality. Sometimes it's a matter of, a developer, there's a project and they come to the municipality, but the municipality has to be the applicant on behalf of that project. Great.
Those are the questions we have in the chat. Let's see. I had a couple too. So this is for Rebecca or Jamie. Is there anything that's been surprised you as you've been kind of grappling with this new concept, and or something that you've had to relearn as you're kind of delving into the circular economy in terms of how you've understood how things work, or are you finding that you're challenged or that you've been surprised by something in this process?
I'll go first. Definitely challenged, but also pleasantly surprised to hear the number of developers and people that we've had conversations with who say they're already doing a lot, which to me was pleasantly surprising. Of course, there's always more to be done, but to hear that people are saving and reusing as much as possible, perhaps it's from a different perspective or reason, that it is money or it saves time, but I can't imagine, or I can't expect everybody to have this whole reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and zero waste and everything. So the reasons for which some people are implementing these practices may vary, but overall, we were pleasantly surprised to see what is currently being done, and really just trying to understand where where the gaps are, where are those gaps? And like Jamie said, just lining it up. Where is it going to go? Who's going to take it? And then actually having some more money to help make it happen. Jamie, did you have anything?
Well, basically, it's all surprising and it's all learning for me because I came at this from a local planning, a municipal planning perspective. And
I
so,
threw him into
certainly,
this.
as right into the mix. And so, as I'm learning about waste reduction and certainly the zero waste economy, I'm learning a lot as I go. But as Rebecca indicated, a lot of these contractors are already doing this, and certainly, as you had indicated, Diane, just finding a market for some of these materials, trying to find a way to move these because they want to find another home for them. They want to find another use for them, but yet they put them out sometimes on the curb hoping that they're going to be taken elsewhere and used because there is no so-called market stream to move them. So certainly seems to be a lot of opportunity. And as I'm learning as we go and having more of these conversations, I think people are being connected and ideas are being hatched. So this is great.
Wonderful. I see there's a couple more questions in the chat. We've got 7 minutes left. I want to throw one more in there because it's top of mind for me. Again, it's this large municipal 1980s building where there's going to be high volumes of materials, and I was really pleased to hear prioritizing highest value, and I think that really makes sense because environmentally it has really positive impacts as well. There's going to be a huge volume of gypsum in this particular building, and that's a huge, it's something that's going to landfills as well as asphalt shingles. So I think there's probably not too long a list of high volume materials that have value but really have no infrastructure to be managed and gotten back into markets. So is that maybe something within your scope that could help with the business or manufacturing development to work on? I remember there was a gypsum plant outside of Albany somewhere, but I don't know if that's still operating. Asphalt shingles are another major piece.
Yeah.
There's concrete, there's all sorts of other things.
Well, I mean, we do have courtesy of the DEC. I mean, they have a mapper for the processing facilities, right? But I asked to have it, we have it actually listed in an Excel format, a table, so that way we can actually search by type of product that we want to, find a home for. So I have that, and I'd be happy to go through it and see if there's some place that we can, find for these. So yeah, absolutely. Let's touch base offline and see if we can help with that.
Sounds great. I know there's much broader interest around it, but it's becoming a moment. So from Dominic, the last question from him: are municipalities able to apply for materials reuse facilities funding, or is it strictly restore focused projects?
Can you repeat that?
At least,
no, go ahead.
Well, yeah, the question is, are municipalities able to apply for materials reuse facilities funding? So I think Dominic's talking about a place where materials can be reused and, marketplaces, or is it strictly restore focused projects?
Well, right now, our focus is primarily on the restoring of downtowns primarily. Again, it's to remove these blighted communities. And so that's where we've been able to have our focuses on these Restore New York projects. I would not be surprised if there are other funding programs that could address some of these types of processing facilities. I would hope so, but we are only focusing on Restore New York on the blighted structures.
Okay.
But ESD does have the and this is how that one project, the windmill blade recovery and recycling facility, they receive their funding through ESD's capital grants funds, and that is an annual solicitation through the consolidated funding application. And like I said, that now has the emphasis of green and sustainable buildings or concepts, ideas. So that may be an avenue based on what he's talking about for that type of funding. Depending on the area, it'd be something you'd want to talk to the regional director and see what the priorities are in that area. But by all means, it can reach out to us and we can start the conversation if there's an interest.
Great. Thank you for that. And then from Rashmi, I am from India, where there was a big informal circular economy that I grew up with. Have you looked at some of the systems in countries such as India, if some ideas can be helpful here?
I have not, but that's definitely a great piece of advice, and I will certainly do that. Just we're touching on it, so this is really helpful. So we'll definitely put that on the list as far as where to research and get some more information. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, there's so many different iterations that I've seen and components of these amazing building materials facilities, deconstruction, economies. I mean, it's just really exciting to see what's happening. There are a number of crowd partners on the call. So, we've got a couple minutes left, and we've got Empire State Development here. So does anyone have something that they're wondering about?
I'm not wondering, but I would just echo Diane's offer that she made a little bit earlier in the call. We have partners both in Tompkins County and Cuyahoga County, so in Central New York, but also increasingly throughout the state. And everyone brings amazing knowledge, interest, commitment to this work. And so I would just say, again, please use us as a resource, a sounding board, a focus group. Please reach out anytime. We also have a lot of contacts outside of New York State who are always incredibly generous with their own experiences and resources and support. So if we're looking to figure out how they did it somewhere else, we often turn to our colleagues, outside of New York State. So please, continue to reach out to us as you're working through this. As we know, for a circular economy to happen, everything has to happen at once.
Yeah, I know.
So we're well aware of
I'm like,
that.
I want to support this, but in order to support this, I need to support this. And then you start to wonder, where do you start? So this, in the end, this is where we're starting. So it only goes up from here, but this is our start.
Well, this is a really exciting start, and really, really grateful to both of you for taking the time tonight, and for everyone for joining this call. And Gretchen, thanks again for getting these going. I'm just so thrilled to see the interest. These recordings are really easy to find on the crowd.org website, CR0WD.org. And it's really easy to navigate. So just really trying to be a resource. So thank you, everyone. And I hope you all have a good evening. Gretchen, do you do a final sign off?
Thank
you, everybody.
All right.
Sign up for our next one in December with our Trilux architecture firm.
Great. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, you too. Take care.
Amy, thank you.